It's Friday, October 21st, 2022, and this is the Washington Times front page. Thanks for joining us. I'm George Gerbo. The shortest prime ministership in Britain's history is leaving the ruling Conservative Party and the United Kingdom facing a long list of questions. British Prime Minister Liz Truss has resigned her post just 45 days after taking the job. Tom Howell and Dave Sands report her leadership was unable to overcome the collapse of confidence in her government after her program of broad tax cuts and deregulation collapsed. It was a stunning collapse for Truss, who tried to stabilize the country after scandal-plagued Boris Johnson was forced out by a party revolt. It's now set off a wide-open race for a successor and demands from the opposition Labour Party that the government call a general election more than 2 years early as it confronts a collapse in public confidence. The Pentagon will cover some travel and transportation costs for service members who must cross state lines for legal abortions. Pentagon correspondent Ben Wolfgang reports Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin announced the policy in a memo. Austin said that limits on access to reproductive health care will interfere with our ability to recruit, retain, and maintain the readiness of the U.S. military. Also in the memo, Austin said the Pentagon will establish privacy rules for pregnant women, including an extension to 20 weeks of the time a service member has before notifying a commander of her pregnancy. A federal appeals court's severe blow to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is poised to chill the agency's financial oversight authority and possibly imperil much of the work it's already carried out. Jeff Murdoch and Alex Sawyer report the Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals held that Congress acted in violation of the Constitution when it delegated its financial authority to an executive agency. Created in 2011, the CFPB was given independence in its leadership and its funding source to shield it from political forces and give it the freedom to go after powerful financial interests. A 3-judge panel ruled that by funding it directly from the Federal Reserve, not through congressional appropriations, it defied the separation of powers. The judges reasoned that Congress appropriates funds via the Appropriations Clause, but handed over that authority when it created the CFPB, giving the agency unchecked power. You can read all of these stories at washingtontimes.com/front page. You can also find our entire lineup of news, commentary, and sports podcasts at washingtontimes.com/podcasts. Violent crime in Philadelphia has surged by 7% over the last year, outpacing national figures. The city reported 388 homicides so far this year, on pace to eclipse last year's record. Property crimes in the city are also up 30%. That dynamic is shaping the Keystone State Senate race this year, Joseph Clark reports from Philadelphia. Republican nominee Mehmet Oz has spent millions of dollars hammering Democratic nominee and Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman as dangerous on crime. Campaign ads point to Fetterman's record of setting convicts free while he served on the state's parole board. Last month, Fetterman enlisted Montgomery County Sheriff Sean Kilkenny for a 30-second ad, pushing back against the parole board's criticism. Philadelphia's patchwork of suburbs was key to President Biden's 2020 victory in Pennsylvania, which he won by more than 81,000 votes. Those communities are now important battlegrounds for Fetterman. And finally, an audit by the Government Accountability Office says some federal agencies skimp on policies for how they treat the working canines they use to carry out their missions. 18 federal offices that use dogs don't have specific standards in place to govern cases of abuse or neglect, Stephen Dinan reports. 9 agencies lacked policies on how much exercise dogs should get. 1, the Fish and Wildlife Service's Office of Law Enforcement, even lacks standards for food and water for its dogs. That's not necessarily to say that animals are being abused, investigators said, but it does make it tougher to evaluate treatment and hold handlers accountable without having clear guidelines. Find all of today's front page stories at washingtontimes.com/front page or on the Washington Times app, and find us wherever you get your podcasts. Just search Washington Times in any major podcast app. You can also find us on Twitter and Instagram at Wash Times for breaking news, sports, commentary, and more. For the Washington Times, I'm George Gerbo.